We're waiting for a few folks to trickle in, but thank you for being here with us. So to start off, we're going to have a few words from the director of the Carr Center, Matthias Rissa, who's a professor teaching. Well, he leads the Human Rights Center here and also teaches on human rights, moral philosophy, all kinds of rights-based classes at Harvard. So I wanted to give him the floor for a little bit, and then we'll start with our event.
Thank you, Diego. Yes, so welcome from my end to everyone for this event. I was asking Diego just for a couple of minutes of your time, because these are obviously difficult times for the kind of work that you guys are all doing. I mean, you guys are used to having difficult times, and they just got more difficult through recent developments in the United States. And I'm sure a lot of you got a substantial shock when you heard that particular line in the presidential inaugural address, when, you know, basically gender roles were specified to either this or that, and or the complexity that that's basically motivating the kind of work that you do, that we do in this program, was ignored. So I want to say on this occasion, I want to say three things. So first of all, we as Carr Center for Human Rights Policy here at the Harvard Kennedy School at Harvard University, we are committed to this program. We are delighted and proud to have this global LGBTQI human rights program. This is something that we launched very successfully. We are very proud and honored to have Diego in charge of it, and Tim McCarthy. And this is something where we will build. So we will make more investments in this. We are committed to this. We will grow it. So just I wanted to say that on this occasion, that, you know, there's this that this is something that we are here to do in perpetuity. The second thing I'd like to say, I think it's also just simply healthy to remind ourselves that as you look at, you know, kind of the general landscape here, obviously there's obstacles here, there's challenges here, but what we also do know is that the lived experience of human beings all around us speaks very much in favor of the position that there's a whole lot more gender complexity than just the traditional binary. So you all know that from your own experience. You know countless people who know this from their life experience. We also know, if we look at this kind of plain the science of that, the natural science of gender selection, there is a well understood role for gender diversity in that domain. If we look at the philosophical arguments that are trying to limit gender roles to just two, we know those are not terribly good arguments. So in a way, over the overall arc here, in terms of lived experience, natural science understanding, philosophical understanding is very much behind the kind of work we are doing here. So I think in the long run, you know, all the good thinking here is in favor of this, and I think this is something worth hanging on to as a thought at this stage. And the last thing I want to say is, of course, these are in many ways sometimes also just times for commiseration and, you know, anger and sadness. But I think what is really important that right now is also a time for agency. So there is a certain constellation now, and I'm specifically talking about the changes in the United States, that make everything that we do here more difficult than it was before. We should not resign. We should not commiserate too much. Obviously, again, there is time for commiseration, but it really is a time for agency, to make alliances, to make new connections, to build connections, to really also make commitments in this line of work. And definitely we here at the Carr Center and at the Kennedy School as a whole, that's what we will do. And I hope that we can all be good partners to the work that you can do. And with that, over to you, Diego.
Thank you, Matthias, and for your support and the Carr Center support for this. And we know it's needed more than ever. And thank you all for being here as well. I'm especially excited about this conversation because it marks a new beginning to our program. You know, we just launched the Global LGBTQI+ Change Makers Network, and it's an incredible community of activists from all over the world who are actively engaged in the movement, and many of whom we've had the privilege to work with for a while. And through this network, we will be offering a wide set of online programs throughout the year, and today's is the first one. So this specific session is open to everyone, but for those in the network, we have a follow-up workshop that is tomorrow at 10 a.m. And that will be modeled after the in-person sessions that we usually run at our class at Harvard. So Some of our online offerings will probably follow this, some kind of webinar that is open to everybody, and then a discussion that will have small groups, breakout groups, so we have a little more interaction and get to know each other in the network throughout the year. So if you're already part of the network, you should have received the email to sign up for tomorrow's session. But we'll also be sharing the link to nominate people to join the network over time, and we'll be, after a vetting process, expanding that. So one of the core principles of this new program is that while theory and frameworks are essential, and of course we believe that here, but the deepest knowledge really comes from those on the ground, those who are not only resisting, but also experimenting, adapting, and learning in real time. People in the real world conditions who are testing approaches and refining what works. And so a critical part of our program now is to elevate these activists as instructors in our program, as educators in their own right. So we're trying to expand the pedagogy of moving beyond traditional panel style discussions and giving activists space to structure their sessions as classes and to teach in ways that best convey the lessons they've learned. So this is how we hope we can shape how knowledge is shared with others in the movement. And today's is the first kind of session that will be employing that. And thank you for the panelists for working with us. So with that in mind, we're honored to be joined today by three incredible activists who have been leading the resistance against the illiberal playbook that is spreading across the world and that is likely to be employed in the United States as things that have already been tried and before. And so as the anti-LGBTQ movement is growing here, we want to learn from them and what they've learned through their years of fighting this. So first we have Denitsa Lubenova, a lawyer and human rights defender from Bulgaria, serving as a head of legal program at SVA, an organization she co-founded. She has led groundbreaking cases on same-sex marriage recognition and LGBTQI plus rights, including a landmark case before the European Court of Justice concerning the citizenship of a child born into a same-sex family. Next, we have Bart Saszewski, who joins us from Poland, a filmmaker, photographer, and activist. Bart, I don't know if you all know, but in Polish municipalities, some municipalities started declaring anti-LGBTQ zones, and Bart is known for his photographic project of those zones, kind of challenging those efforts. And his work really has been instrumental in drawing international attention to the growing threats against the LGBTQ people in Poland. And finally, we have Luca Dudic, who's the executive board member of Hatter Society, which is Hungary's largest LGBTQI plus organization. And since 2020, Luca has led advocacy efforts, awareness campaigns, activist coalitions, and including a civic engagement campaign that successfully challenged Hungary's government-backed anti-LGBTQ referendum. So I'm honored to moderate the discussion today and look forward to hearing from our panelists. So let's go ahead and begin with Denitsa.
Thank you, Diego, and thank you for this invitation and for the privilege to be a speaker in this new beginning for your program, but also for the United States at the moment. First of all, I want to excuse myself because I'm quite sick and I might be coughing a bit, but I prepared a short presentation. Let me just share my screen. Just a second. So can you see it? Okay.
Yes, although we might want to put full screen if you want.
Full screen? Is it like this now, full screen?
We see the PowerPoint. That could work, but if you wanted to...
Just a second. I don't know why.
If you have two screens, you might have to share the ones with the full screen on it.
Well, I'm not sure if it's gonna work.
Let's just go with this. No worries.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. It's every time as a lawyer, I have technical issues all the time. But yes, Diego, thank you for representing me. So my name is Denica Ljubanova. I'm a human rights lawyer, and since 2014, I'm working on LGBTI rights in Bulgaria, here in Bulgaria. So first of all, very quickly on the organization that I represent, because it's very much connected to the work that we're doing and to the situation, political and legal context that we have to navigate in. So DASTIE is an LGBT organization, and our main focus is providing pro bono legal support to the LGBTI community and doing strategic litigation in three main areas of work. So first of all is the same-sex marriages recognition and partnership recognition, a recognition of the rights of trans people to have their legal gender recognition recognized by the Bulgarian legislation, because it is not at the moment, hate crime legislation, which we already fight for, and we have in place since 2023. And since last year, our main focus is the anti-LGBTI propaganda laws that I will be talking in a little while. So a little bit about the context and the situation in Bulgaria. So Bulgaria is well known to be one of the most homophobic and transphobic countries in the European Union. I guess we are in a fight with Hungary and Romania to be in the bottom of acceptance in the European Union. But according to a couple of surveys that were done by the Fundamental Rights Agency of the European Union, Bulgaria ranks on one of the last places in Europe in terms of tolerance and in terms of discrimination against the LGBTIQ community. We are on the leading places. Hate crime and hate speech is not punished at all, even though we have legislation and it became part of the criminal code since 2023. Still, hate speech and hate crime, there's still no investigations in place, although there are reports in the police and in our platforms for quite severe attacks against members of the community. So what we are dealing with is very common hate crime attacks, so physical attacks, but also a violation of private spaces, violation of homes. And since 2021, every event of the LGBT organizations in the country had been attacked. So there is not a single event since 2021 that wasn't attacked by far-right supporters. And this hostile environment that was created, and I will talk a little bit how it was created. This hostile environment is also supported by political parties. It is supported by from the Bulgarian Parliament Tribune, and it is supported by the Bulgarian judicial system, but also, as I will show, by the legislator. A little bit about the legislation in place. So Bulgaria is one of the countries that has no recognition whatsoever of the same-sex partners, the same-sex couples relationship. So there is no marriage, but there is no partnerships at all. And according to a research that we had executed back in 2018 and renewed this year, because of the lack of recognition, there are over 300 rights that LGBTIQ plus people are deprived of because of the non-recognition of their our relationships. And where does this widely spread homophobia and transphobia comes from? I would say that it all started with back in 2018 with the ratification of the Council of Europe Convention for Prevention of Domestic Violence and Gender-Based Violence, or shortly named the Istanbul Convention. Back then, there was a massive attack from religious groups and from traditional family groups against the Istanbul Convention, stating in their public speeches and in their advertising that the Istanbul Convention is trying to promote the so-called gender ideology, so a term that they've invented back then, and is trying to legalize same-sex marriage. This massive attack basically moved the society, and it pressured the political parties back then, which were in power, and they not only did not ratify the convention, but also it led to a constitutional court judgment defining defining gender as a biological concept, and defining gender as only being male and female. And with this, putting the first step for an actual ban on legal gender recognition. So the first several judicial attacks, as I call them, were connected with the first one was connected with the implementation of the European Court of Justice judgment on the VMA case. So this is a case for recognition of birth certificate of a child born in a same-sex family, as Diego mentioned in the beginning. Just to clarify, these judgments are obligatory for all member states, and all member states have to comply with them. However, Bulgaria, even though the case was concerning one of the parents of the child was a Bulgarian mother, so we started the case and we brought it to the Court of Justice. At the end, the Supreme Administrative Court of Bulgaria completely ignored the judgment of the Court of Justice of the European Union, and stated that the child did not have any right for Bulgarian citizenship. Of course, this led to several legal procedures that we started, as a complaint to the European Commission, complaint to the European Court of Human Rights, but these are very lengthy procedures and they require time. The second attack, judicial attack against the community, was an interpretative ruling of the Supreme Court of Cassation in Bulgaria against the legal gender recognition of trans people. Basically, from 1990, when Bulgaria became a democratic state, because before this it was part of the presumably one of the republics of the Soviet Union. But so since 1990 until 2023, the legal gender recognition cases were going through the Bulgarian courts without any problem. And we, in the 98% of the cases, we had a positive judgment. But since the interpretative ruling from February 2023, there was a complete and actual immediate ban on legal gender recognition. And the procedure for trans people to change their legal gender marker in their documents was closed. This was the second ring bell that we received, and the second judicial attack. And it was very important because we started preparing for even worse situation until August last year, August 2024, in the middle of the summer, when the Bulgarian parliament was supposed to be on vacation, suddenly an anti-LGBTIQ propaganda law in schools was proposed, and it literally passed the first and second reading of the Bulgarian parliament within 1 day. We were caught completely unprepared for this. However, we immediately reacted, and we reached out to the European Commission, European Parliament, and international bodies, the UN, and we received enormous support. However, this law is still in place, and no actions from the Bulgarian Parliament were taken against this. What is at the moment pending in the country is there is at the moment a pending proposal for amendment in the Child Protection Act in Bulgaria, again targeting the trans community, and trying to impose a ban on hormonal treatment when hormonal treatment can be used as a saving life treatment. And of course, the how we call it, the package. The Bulgarian Parliament is currently working on a Foreign Agent Registration Act, which is targeting all civil society organizations in the country, following the example of Russia. And also is preparing an act on lobbying, which forbids any advocacy activity from the civil society organizations. But this act on lobbying is very important that it is targeting only civil society organizations. It is not targeting businesses, it is not targeting lawyers, and it is not targeting any individual, just CSOs. And last but not least, something from today. There is a proposal for a special committee within the parliament to investigate the CSOs working in the country, which received funding from the Open Society Foundation. Of course, we call this the Russian playbook. And we call it the Russian playbook not because it's only Russia that uses these tools, but because it all started from the post-Soviet countries, and it spread basically around the world. And how we build resilience, because I think this is very important. What we learned from these 7 years, when our communities were under constant attack, is to be together, to organize massive protests, to protect each other, to be vocal because it literally saves lives, and to search for partners. Throughout these 7 years, we managed to build very important, very important connections, important connections with the European Commission, with the European Parliament, with other CSOs around the European Union, but also in the US. And we are constantly exchanging practices and exchanging ideas how to manage and how to oppose laws and policies that are trying to outlaw our work and us as part of the LGBTI community. And I am always available, even after this meeting, to help with suggestions, with anything that might be of help in the current situation in the US. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will be think of your questions for Lisa and put it in the chat, and we'll revisit those before we end. But for now, I'll pass it over to Luca.
Thank you. Give me a second, and I will also share my screen. From Hungary, I will talk a little bit about the anti-LGBTQI referendum that we managed to defeat in 2022. To give you a little bit of context, this is very similar to Bulgaria. In 2019, the government's attacks against the LGBTQI community has started. They have started using us as a scapegoats in their daily speeches. And in 2020, they first banned legal gender recognition. And then later on, they also passed several anti-LGBTQI measures. And one of them was a very similar propaganda law as in Russia and Bulgaria, which banned showing LGBTQI people for minors in all goods and services, so books, movies, advertisements, media content, and also school programs. And because this obviously violates EU directives, the European Commission launched an infringement procedure against Hungary. And in response to this, the government decided that they will demonstrate that Hungary has public support for this law with a referendum. And this referendum ended up being on the same day as the general elections. So we had to think quite long and hard about how to counter it. When we were campaigning against the referendum, it was altogether 12 NGOs, and it was Amnesty International Hungary and Hatter Society, so my organization, that was co-leading this coalition. And the referendum was also a very handy way for the government to thematize LGBTQI rights in the public discourse and make sure to mobilize the polarized parts of the society in the general elections. So this is, I think, a good example of how our community is not only scapegoat, but also instrumentalized in elections. Because it was on the same day as the general elections, we had no way of actually boycotting it, because to tell people to boycott the referendum, then they would also boycott the elections. And at the time, there was hope in Hungarian society that there is a chance, or there was a chance, that the Fidesz government could be defeated in the elections. Spoilers, it did not happen, but because of this, we really didn't want to push for a boycott. And because the questions were so manipulative, so for example, one of the questions was, do you support that children are shown materials in the media that is detrimental to their mental development? There is no way that you can advocate for yes, because obviously we also want to safeguard children. So the only way was for us is to invalidate the referendum. And to do this, it's a very technical thing. You have to cross both the yes and the no on the ballot paper. And as you can see here on the right, these two axes, the crosses, indicating the invalid voting was on basically all of our on our materials that we were disseminating. We were trying to counter this pretty much instrumentalizing and dehumanizing campaign of the government that very much focused on child protection, how, you know, kids need to be protected from us because even the mere mention of LGBTQI people in the media would be harmful for them. So we really tried to counter this with showcasing personal stories. So here on the left, you can see one boy with his swimming teacher or trainer, who is still a very protective person and kind of a mother figure in his life. We also did 4 videos. I will show one of them in a moment with English subtitles. And we also did 12 more photo stories to showcase the diversity of the Hungarian LGBTQI community, and to make sure that people understand that this is not just something that is going on in Budapest or something that is, you know, imported from the West, but this is something that everyday Hungarian people experience in their lives. What we focused on the campaign is hope and value-based messaging. We did research previously as to what are the base values of Hungarians, and the main 3 that came out were safety, equality, and family. So we really wanted to showcase families or friends or kind of parental figures in society, and have them talk about how it's important for them or to them that their loved one who happens to be LGBTQI can live safely and happily in the country. To do this, we have limelight or showcased or highlighted, I think is the good word, the allies in our community or around our community, which we had a big discussion about, because usually, you know, when it comes to doing LGBTQI campaigns, we usually try to, you know, uplift our own community's voice. But in this case, because we had to convince 2 million people, which in context that is 20% of Hungary's total population and almost half of the voting population, we really had to make sure that our messengers were people that the voters could relate to. And they're more likely to relate to a mom or a dad or a swimming teacher than, you know, an LGBTQI activist like me. So that is why our target audience was the movable middle. And here you can see some of the families and the parents that took part in the campaign. Yes, I just mentioned this. So in total, we were part of our campaign was more than 400 volunteers who were handing out flyers, putting up posters, organizing flash mobs in their local communities. And we really do think that having more than 400 volunteers all over the country, this might not seem like a lot, but in Hungarian context, this was one of the biggest civil campaigns in the past 2 decades. So they were, you know, engaging with their own communities, and I think that really helped to make a difference, because we also did a little campaign tour with the core team of the campaign, where we talked to the local activists and flyered or canvassed with them. But I think it really helped that, you know, we had someone who was a teacher in the school, or who used to be part of the child protection services there, or someone who was a pensioner. And all of these volunteers were from all different kind of backgrounds. So we had, of course, youth, we had university students, but I have very fond memories of flyering together with pensioner ladies. Some of them didn't even had grandchildren who were LGBTQI themselves, but they thought that, you know, maybe some of them end up coming out because most of them are quite young, or maybe they will have a friend who is LGBTQI, and they want to make sure that they are supported. So I think that having that, and, you know, going to the market at 7 in the morning, and it's one thing when I hand you a flyer and ask you to vote invalidly, and it's a different thing when a lady who is, you know, 75 years old is handing you a flyer and asking you to vote invalidly. So I really think that there was a lot of strength in that. And I will show a video, and I'm hoping that the voice will work. and it's 3 minutes, so I hope it will fit in our schedule.
Szerintem a mássággal nem lehet nem szembesülni. Erről szól a létezés. Bőti Mihály vagyok, nyugdíjas.
Takács Kinga vagyok, 4 gyermeknek az édesanyja, nyugdíjas, de még dolgozom
I
mellette.
think the subtitles stopped working. It only worked in the beginning. I think they came
Oh, you
back.
can't see the subtitles?
They just came back. They just came back. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, sorry, it's down. So the Hungarian one will be in the middle and the English is on the bottom.
Szerinted milyen szülők vagyunk?
Hú. Hát szerintem normálisak vagyunk. Szeretjük a gyerekeinket.
I'm not seeing the
Hogyan emlékszem
subtitles.
arra, amikor elmondtam.
Or they're coming in.
Okay.
Really. Yeah. You want to just maybe
Okay.
give us a gist of what's happening?
Yeah, sure. Sorry. So we had set questions for all of the family members. I will make sure to send the link to the videos to you, Diego, and then maybe you can send it out to those interested, or maybe in a follow-up email. And all of the parents who are involved in the videos talk about how, in this case, how their son came out to them and what they were feeling. And what are their biggest fears when it comes to Farkas?
Okay, it
their
seems like
son.
maybe I was the only one that didn't see the subtitles, so I'm sorry. Maybe we continue. I'm sorry about that.
Okay, so should I start it?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay.
A farkas, hogy meleg.
Nekem nem kellett nagy levegőket vennem, és felpofozni magam az élők sorába, hanem én ezt egyszerűen elfogadtam.
Hát nekem nagyon meglepő volt, nagyon megrázó. Egy teljesen új világba éreztem magam. Akkor döbbentem rá arra, hogy a melegség vagy a másság az elsősorban nem a másságról szól, hanem az emberről szól. Mikor vagy büszke farkasra?
Hát szinte mindig.
Körülbelül.
Ő egy jól összerakott fiú, barátságos, melegszívű, hát tényleg. Szóval.
Igen.
Mitől félted?
A nem elfogadott, vagy az emberek által felületesen ismert nemi mássággal kapcsolatban felületes bántásoktól.
Minket hogy érint ez a népszavazás?
Szerintem hátrányosan. Mert hogy a megkülönböztetést erősíti. Mit éreznél, ha nem tennénk semmit ebben a helyzetben?
Hát, bedugom a fejemet a homokba.
Félelmeim miatt vagyok itt, nem jó érzés félni, és hogy ezzel a témakörrel kapcsolatban azt gondolom, hogy jogosan félek, és hogy ne kelljen félni, se nekem, se másoknak.
Tegyünk együtt egy szabad, elfogadó és mindenki számára biztonságos Magyarországért. Érvénytelen kérdésre érvénytelen válasz. Csatlakozz hozzánk!
Yeah, so we had 4 videos like that and 12 more photo stories from all over the country, and we really try to highlight how LGBTQI people are, you know, a valuable part of their families, and that their parents and sisters and aunts, they all worry for them, and that they just want to be happy, which is, I don't think it's a quite avant-garde or groundbreaking revelation, but we thought that having a video that highlights that kind of love that is shared among or in families or within or among friends is something that will make you feel nice and good. And as cliche as that sounds, in the very cutthroat political campaigns before an elections, we thought that this would be a video that even if you don't particularly agree with it, even then you can see that, oh yeah, like these parents, they love their kids, even if he's gay. So we thought that it would be a nice message to have that. In this picture, you can see a flash mob with 75 volunteers. We had quite a few of these. Again, you can see all kinds of people, which was one of the strengths of the campaign. So this is the budget. I think it's quite funny. So the Hungarian government spent more than $60 million only on the advertisements involved in the campaign. They did not showcase all of the numbers, but this was public data, so it was accessible. And our campaign was a little over $200,000 with the entire budget, including all of the staff costs on and online and offline ads and design. So as you can see, we were quite a bit more restricted when it came to our spending efforts. And as for the results, the referendum was indeed invalid. Almost 2 million people voted invalidly in all 4 questions, and therefore it did not reach the validity threshold. The necessary threshold is 50%, and it was only 47%. This meant that the Hungarian government did not have the legal basis to pass more anti-LGBTQI legislation. And from what we have had feedback from our community, it really felt like they were living in a country where they were respected for once, and that they were held as valuable members of society, because so many people actually came to vote invalidly in the referendum. And here you can also see 2 families. So Emmet is a trans man, and that's his mom. And then on the right, these are the grandparents of one of our volunteers, who is also out and proud with his boyfriend. And he's also one of the very few people in Hungary who is out about being a person who lives with HIV. So I think that the referendum was, or the referendum campaign was a quite interesting case study of how we can counter the instrumentalizing and dehumanizing ways of the Hungarian government. And I think I will wrap it up now to be conscious of time. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you so much. I have so many follow-ups, but for now we'll go to Bart. You're up next.
Thank you for having me. Yes, I also will share some videos, some things. Myself as an activist for many years, I was always with the moving pictures, with the films, with the photos. This is my full-time job as a videographer. So I speak to the people with the pictures, with emotions. I am not the typical activist who is into grassroots work. Sometimes, usually time-consuming and time-taking to create some report or campaign. On the very end, I usually speak through the human stories. So I could say that before the right-wing government took power in Poland, I created a documentary called Article 18, which is like the most important film in my career, which is also about the Polish constitution. It's also about the Polish constitution, the Article 18 of Polish constitution, which was always used as some kind of excuse to not move forward with the LGBT rights. And thinking about that, it was always an excuse, because politicians could do more, but they never done. So I together with a bunch of people created this amazing documentary with amazing experts who agreed to take part in it. And so we could, instead of talking about our story, we could like put it on the YouTube, put it to the cinemas, because on the very first stage it was in the cinemas, and to show to the people what is our story. And it was a big success. And I could say that the documentaries, it's a one thing, but then going forward, what happened in Poland after 2016, when Land Justice, the right-wing government, took power, it was something more dramatic that we could never expect. And it's what I also hear from my friends who are also here talking about their stories. It's always we call it the boiling frog process. You are the frog in the boiling pan, and the temperature is slowly warming up. And you see it, you as an activist, you see the breaking points of it. But normal people who are the ordinary citizens, they don't get it. They don't see it, that there is some warning points that they should watch, that they should stand and think about. And my mission as an activist was always how to put the people focus on the things that I think are important in the time of 3 seconds focus on TikTok, or you just swipe up to another video. How we can put people attention into the things that matter with few words. So when land justice, our right-wing government started to be more and more radical, people get too used to that things. People get to use that they speak more and more radical about the LGBT stuff, LGBT people, that the trans issues, as they used to say, are some kind of threat to the Polish families, to the Polish nation. And people get to hear it all the time, and they get to used to this narrative. So our campaigning against it were like a mess, because there was one side and the second side. One side were their side and the second side was our side. People started to think that this all is about, some kind of culture war, not the human beings. So how to put this into the human beings instead of speaking about the numbers, about the statistics. And before I go further into what happened in Poland, what I was involved, I will just show you a short video that will make you a short introduction into my campaigning. Let me do it now. Do it here. Okay. I don't know if you see it. I hope so. Okay.
You can see it. Well,
Yes, you will see it in a second. Give me, here.
Poland, where a culture war for the soul of the country is being fought. A third of the nation is now a so-called gay-free zone. Many LGBT people no longer feel welcome in their own towns. Anti-gay rhetoric is, critics say, being dressed up as Catholic values and Polish nationalism. Meet Alicia. She's 19, queer, and lives in the heart of one of Poland's so-called LGBT free zones.
I'm just trying to imagine what it's like for you, because this is where you were born.
Yeah.
Your family are here.
Yes.
And yet we're right in the middle of a gay-free zone.
Mm-hmm.
How does that leave you feeling?
My neighbors are scared to tell me through my face that they don't like me, they don't accept me. Someone has to fight.
In Białystok last year, the Pride March turned into a riot. Neo-Nazis stamp on rainbow flags. Alicia was attacked there.
And it was terrifying, like the hooligans choose me like main target, and through the firecrackers, a lot of them. I was really scared.
Activists say the discrimination has in part been driven by the ruling right-wing Law and Justice Party, with the leader referring to LGBT ideology as a threat to the Polish nation. Homophobic graffiti and stickers have been appearing across the country and in this village. Alicia has been cut.
Yes, and this is a short video that shows you the part of the story. Government started to create documents like this, where they oppose to so-called LGBT ideology. And it's a one-pager, and we started to really transfer it into our stories, telling that this is something horrible. People started to listen to us, but they still told that, this is declarations. Of course, they are voting on that on the local level, but it's nothing. It's not a new law. It's more about declaration that they will fight against so-called ideology. And we try to convince media that is something more that is happening. It's some war, some fight on our identity. They want to erase that. That is something that never happened before since the war. that you can replace LGBT ideology with Jews, and then you see maybe that there is something very wrong. But people will say, still telling that, nah, you know, I mean, journalists was not really taking this seriously. So in the meantime, there was a right-wing newspaper that went with the wave and created stickers that they put it into their magazine, and on it you can see the LGBT reason and the cross on the rainbow flag. And they had a full legal right to do so. Of course, you could see the atmosphere, which were going in the very wrong direction. And myself, I was thinking how we can use this phrase, LGBT reasons, which was created by the right-wing people, and recycle it into some kind of story, recycle it into some happening. And behind me, I have my sign, which I use in my project. So it's a very big yellow sign, still one, created by a company who is creating such a sign, not such a sign, but the signs for road signs. And the part town I'm living, there is a military base in the neighborhood, and they have like a military base, go away in 3 languages. So I used the idea of that to simply put the whole decoration into the one picture, to tell the one story in one picture. It was the whole thing, how we can tell our story in one picture. So, and I started to move around to the municipalities who introduced those acts to be, you know, took seriously, and then put this on the web, and it went viral. So it didn't came from nowhere. For past 6, 7, 8 years, I am videographer for Greenpeace. I know what is the happening. I know how to create things that then speaks for themselves. And one of the main ideas for the Greenpeace is to create one picture that will tell the whole story. And they usually work on the very end on the campaign. They make their homework, they do reports, they do the whole analysis, and then they make a picture, the photo opportunity, as they used to say, and everyone in the media tell. So in my activism and in past years in Poland, I've seen many other activists who use happenings, who use photo opportunities to create some kind of civil disobedience acts. And it was some of the most important things in Poland. Those who had this privilege, like myself, put themselves into the dangerous situations, sometimes risking to get to the jail, to create a certain space to speak that they are attacking us. If they are telling that they are creating LGBT free zones, of course we're gonna be there. Of course we're gonna do whatever is necessary to break the laws, break the rules, to show that this is not something that they will some way to silence us. I will also show you some pictures I collected through the past years. It's here, yep. So here are the photos I created for the project, so you can imagine what it was about. So it was the municipalities I went to, I created those photos, I made those photos. On some of them you can see the people who were living in those towns, or they came from those towns. I invited them to the photo project, and then they was the protagonist, they could tell their stories. I was also working with them to create those stories. I mean, because they had their stories, but they didn't know how to tell them. So before I send the CNN or BBC to them, I wanted to know that they will not tell something very strange, because sometimes media want blood and blood and flesh. This is something that we could see past years, that when you have the journalist, you need to create a line, where is the news and where is the real story. So those were the photos I created, and I could also say that I even went to the hangar with my sign for one day. I was on the conference, and I was thinking, why not to put the LGBT free zone sign on the parliament? It was a very fresh situation, few days after they passed this law against the LGBT people. So of course I was risking some penalties for doing that, because it's not allowed to even cross the line over there. But they started to Google my name, the police officers, on the phones, and they put me without even on a ticket. So this was also another thing. And to tell about this, creating the Civil Disobedience Acts, I also need to tell about one of the non-binary activists who get arrested in the town. And we, as all of us, we heard about this. We went to the town. We started to create a peaceful act of, sitting in front of the police car, which was not signed. It was the civil police car, so you could see the police officer sitting inside of it. And so how it started and how it ended on this few short videos. We started to shout, sit there to block the police car from moving. Or I will just move to next video, which is, it will be easier to tell the story. Because of course we started with the short videos, with the chanting and sitting. I don't know if it's working or not, I don't think so. But maybe now it will work. Or the Google just blocked us. I don't know, but I will just tell the story. So we started with this Civil Disobedience Act, which was blocking the police car, and then of course police took nearly 80 people to the police stations for blocking this police car. It was a huge thing in whole Poland because never something like this happened. Of course, they had some legal right to do so, but it was a very big thing. We started to talk about our rights. We started to tell that our government is taking us for what we are doing and what we think is correct to do. And of course, this was the most one of the most important protests in the time of Law and Justice. We compare it to the Stonewall protest when all of those activists get arrested, and the main activist, which was the trans activist, were also speaking afterwards after getting to jail for 10 days and then getting out, telling her story. So what I want to tell on the very end, to be prepared to create the Civil Disobedience Acts, be prepared to not obey the law which is created by the new government, which is attacking us, and really thinking when we think about that, this is some kind of culture war, the war on an attack on our rights, to really defend ourselves, because it's through past 8 years I could see that we created something amazing. We created a rainbow solidarity, which is the peaceful weapon of the Civil Disobedience Act, and people who could put them into danger, to risk a lot and to build certain strength in our community, which is still visible in now, and it's our power. And the last thing I could also tell is to use the opportunities where the politicians are supporting us, but also to push as much as possible from them. Because right now, when we have the new liberal government, we see how they are finding new excuse to not introduce the laws that will protect us, or the even civil unions or whatever they promised during many protests, when they was protesting during the Law and Justice era, when they was among us telling that yes, you have right to be here, of course you are not an ideology. And now we have new government and they are trying to disturb everything, blur everything, that yes, of course it was the time of Law and Justice, but we can't make a decision with a big coalition which is so different. And I could say that from point of view right now, it's also important to collect different testimonials, things, pressure on the politicians to put them accountable in the future, when it will be the time of the new government, to push them until there's a video of you telling that you will vote or even introduce the Civil Unions Act in future. What about this? Is it also something that you want to blur out or not? Such a testimonials would be something amazing, and this is something we are missing, because we need to remember that right now, for those people who are now fighting in their countries, it's always like this, that all narratives or the medias are trying to, of course, if they're liberal, to help you, but then they will be missing, because they will support the new government, which will be liberal, and they will not maybe focus so much on the LGBT rights, what we really see here now in Poland, which is very visible. So Yes, and of course, that's all of the activists here. I'm open for any questions, advice. If you will be like willing to contact me, I will always will help or advise on any kind of campaigning stuff. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And we have a period of questions here for 15 minutes for anyone who wants to stay from the audience to put questions. I wanted just to kind of put some points together, and the analogy of the frog boiling, I think, is a very important one, because you have to kind of envision where things could go if this is just a start, for example, and begin acting now before things get too difficult, before things escalate. And so we already see the main messages that are going out about especially trans people being a threat, the main messages that are being built as possible excuses to ban LGBTQ advocacy, as threat to children, all these things, and we need to be prepared for that. We also see that the courts can radically change on people, and instead of being this liberationist kind of vehicle that we had, they could turn into something that starts to oppress. And so we need good legal minds working on this, and we need to be aware in that front as well. And then I really see just, and I want to echo kind of this point that Bart made, but maybe it's due for another Stonewall moment, right, in the United States. Like maybe this is the year of Stonewall 2025, kind of where we don't take this and wait until things get bad, but we start mobilizing right away. We start massive mobilizations, we start organizing at the local level, we start getting people ready to do flash mobs, etc. Find ways for people to be able to show their support so that there isn't this illusion that everyone is kind of taking this this message and running with it, but rather there's resistance right all over the ground. And the faster that gets going, the better it will be, right? So it's like this is a time now for mobilizations to show support, all that. And then the last thing I wanted from my notes is to humanize the issues, because I think one of the main myths being created right now is that somehow LGBTQ people, especially trans people, are not real, that there's just some ideology, which is of course not true. We've had trans people, I teach in my coronation class with Tim McCarthy, Roman Emperor Elagabalus, who asked to be called lady, like this is age old. But now they're trying to package it as something that isn't discriminatory because it isn't real, right? But no, it's true. Trans people exist. Trans people have always been here. And so getting the stories out and changing hearts and minds is really important. So thank you all for that. I think we learned a lot, and I think you also put a little fire in us to see like what we can do. I think for a long time we've been enjoying, in the United States at least, some success of the movement, and having really been put in the back heel like this for a while. And I think it's time now to shift the way we're thinking about this. So I'm going to just pick a question from the chat. So one of the attendees says, I'm wondering how you are responding to increasing anti-trans rhetoric among LGBT people and feminists against trans people, I'm guessing. How would you be, have you been able to counteract this messaging to build solidarity with these logical allies?
I am happy to answer this. So in Hungary, we try to identify feminists who are trans inclusive and trans friendly. And there were a few, not the biggest and most mainstream feminist organizations, but still feminist organizations nonetheless. And we collaborate with them on comprehensive sex education specifically. And we try to highlight issues that affect both of our communities. I mean, there is a huge overlap, and we see that, when trans people are attacked, then LGBT people are attacked, and women are also attacked. So even if we are trying to work a specific topic from different angles. So for example, talking about body autonomy, but in Hungary specifically, that doesn't really work in the society about abortion, because it's more about the choice of women or the safety of women or being able to work or live. So we are trying to work together on, for example, as I said, comprehensive sex ed, this was basically banned after the propaganda law, and we are highlighting how it is absolutely young women who are feeling this the most, because they are very vulnerable to peer pressure, and this ends up being the situation that porn is the only educational tool that young people have, because there is no sex education. And when you highlight that, then a lot of people are going to think that, oh, okay, maybe that doesn't work, or maybe this shouldn't be how young people in our society are being introduced to intimacy and love and relationships. So I think try to identify allies and try to identify common issues, and I think sexual and reproductive rights and sex ed specifically are good topics for that.
Yes, and I think maybe this answers another question, which was about collaborating with other, or maybe someone wants to touch on this, but collaborating with other people that have been kind of attacked, immigrant groups, or we mentioned women's rights, but I think it kind of fits in that finding allies and being able to share resources. And Lutza, what you did with the coalition with Amnesty and others really shows the power of that. So one of the questions here is, how do you deal with a speech where progressive sectors remain silent out of fear of seeming woke? So it says, for example, Kamala Harris didn't speak much about LGBTQ issues in her campaign, even though she was competing against Trump. What do you think about when your allies abandon you? And I think this is something you would probably talk about, because you don't exactly have, even the better parties don't exactly are your biggest supporters.
If I could jump onto that, I really follow what is happening in states, and since Kamala Harris became candidate, and I could see how she was missing the LGBT topics in her in her speeches, and from what I see and what I think, it will be so, because those liberal candidates, they are not our advocates, and they use us when they need us, and this is the horrible true story. And of course, some of them believe in. I believe that she believe into what we represent, that we are human beings, that we deserve to have a dignity in our lives. But on the very, very, very end, she's a politician who can't be afraid of be labeled as woke. And this is the thing that I see in states which became quite problematic, and there is no solution. Then one is a solution into that. I think that we need charismatic leader in our communities that will speak for ourselves. We will promote them instead of the politicians. And this is the key for the success. And I see too many activists in Poland who are not given the right platform because they are women, because they are trans, and whenever journalists approach me, I used to tell them that, this is the topic. Maybe when you want to speak about the trans issues, let's speak with the trans person. And this is the thing that we need to understand as activists, to give platform to other, to give a proper space for those who are our proper advocates for our cause. Politicians, I don't feel that they are the solution in this case. We need to create our own leaders that will go to the media, speak for ourselves, and then support our communities.
Great. I think that kind of goes into Hunter's point, but I'll say that there are people who are caving in advance, right? And so I think the point is we need to make sure to keep their feet on the fire to understand that they have a price to pay too for leaving our community behind, and that we are, ultimately the stories also reach them. One question we forget a lot, which I know is complicated, but it's about the religious and Bible-based narratives. And so, that's always part of, there's going to be a sector of people who are really latch onto that, but then a sector of people that you can kind of win with stories. So what are your approaches to that?
If I can just share one thing from Poland, that we had there is one or few, not the biggest, but somehow not also the smallest NGOs, which are collecting believers LGBT believers, and it's called Rainbow and Fate. So they are like trying to tell the story of the believers who are also LGBT people. But they are not the best at campaigning, which is it's a pity, because I believe that they could bring something to the table. At the same time, we see conservative movements inside of the LGBT people telling that they have some kind of conservative approach to different things. I could even tell that the marriage as an idea is also a conservative idea. But I think that this is the thing that we should be more open on the allies in our own community who can have very different approach, because if they bring us to the solution, which is having the equality and equality, so maybe it's one of the good ideas to have them inside of us.
One of the things that I'll share too from all the work that we do is when we show people, right, some of the things that we teach, for example, with the adaptive leadership model here at HKS is one of the things that people fight the most against when they're going through a journey of accepting LGBTQ people is that they're feeling a loss of their identity with their religion and whatnot. And so when you identify groups like this one, like the Rainbow Faith group, you're able to show them that it's possible to be a person of faith and a person of acceptance, right? Just the discrimination piece is something that is, one side of this is how one group practices, but it doesn't mean it's like that. And so the other thing too is there are a lot of people, for example, that have very successfully organized to show the harmful effects of things like the religious conversion therapies. Because a lot of religious people believe, oh, if only they went to church and they went to God, this would be fixed. And there's people who go through all these programs, myself included. And when we come out, we realize we're as low as ever because we thought we were supposed to be fixed. We think that there's some hopelessness there. And in the United States, for example, there's a group called Exodus International that used to do this. And all those stories of suicides came to them of people who had gone through their program, and then they shut down. And they publicly apologized. And so there are ways to kind of combat these myths and also minimize the loss people feel, and saying you don't have to lose your religion because you're accepting. There's other ways to practice that is accepting, and probably better to the ethos of equality and acceptance that your God wants. So okay, we're coming up on time, but I wanted to see if any of you had any closing remarks.
I do. And that is that in the last 2 years, we have started a depolarizing workshop for our allies and our community, which focuses on giving people communication tools and basically changing the mindset of having difficult conversations within your community is what is going to change the world. And that acceptance isn't a yes or no question, a switch that you can flip. It's a continuum of 9 stages, and it will usually take years for people to move along on this scale, and it is not a completely linear progress. But I think that actually having these conversations within our own neighborhoods, communities, the knitting group that you go to, the book club, having those very difficult conversations around the Christmas dinner, those are the ones that are going to count in the long run. And I think that once we change the hearts and minds of our communities, that will also have an effect on the institutions. So I think that we really need to go back to like very grassroots organizing like that. Oh, it's not a guide yet, but I am. Once we are done with the project, I would be happy to actually do it.
Yeah, let's share it with the network. I would love to invite you back to teach it with the Global Change Makers Network. Anita, go ahead.
Well, as a lawyer, I just want to build on this, but from another perspective. I would suggest that always use the legal tools available in your country or in your continent. For us in Europe, except having the national legal tools, we also have the European Commission and European Court of Human Rights. And of course, this makes maybe things a little bit better. I'm not completely sure about this, but wanted just to maybe quickly mention on the situation in the US and how this is affecting the whole world at the moment, because the US is supposedly one of the biggest funders internationally, and stopping the international funding, this affects many thousands maybe of LGBTI NGOs around the world. And a lot of, because I've been talking in the last week, since last Saturday, to a lot of people from the region, and especially these folks and these LGBTI NGOs in the Western Balkans, in the Georgia, in Armenia. I mean, they are entirely dependent on the US funding, and actually this cease of this international funding is stopping the function of their organizations. So this will create a whole new environment for our movement internationally, and maybe we as a community have to think how we can together collectively fight against these pushbacks and results. Thank you.
Thank you. From myself, I would like advise everyone to use unusual tactics to get inspired by amazing leaders from the past, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, and others. Learn from the past to not make the same mistakes, and also to get to hire a lawyer when you want to make some unusual acts of civil disobedience. Read books. There is an amazing book of Anne Applebaum, Twilight of Democracy. It's very like you can learn a lot from it. And what more? I could say that, you know, unusual tactics during such oppression times are always good. Outing right-wing gay Republicans is one of them. There are controversial things, but we can talk about them. This is the amazing thing in our community, that we can talk about those things. And there will be always groups that will agree, the other will not. I mean, let's try sometimes. And yes, and don't forget about yourselves, to care about ourselves, and be aware of the burnout, because myself, I was on such a high level of dopamine for past years, like 8 years. So when the Law and Justice went gone, I don't know what to do with myself, because I don't know how to work normally on things, because, you know, I got to use that every day, every time the police can came, you know, that we need to fight, you know. So it's always good to have something, you know, to care about ourselves and free time, have a hobby, you know. Fight is also good, important, but, you know, families and our partners also are also important. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we'll continue fostering these conversations and also hearing from people from other parts of the world dealing with different types of attacks, so we can learn from each other. And through the network also, we'll invite people to kind of we're kind of the Bright Spots initiative, which we'll be rolling out this year, which to submit things that have worked well, to see if they could work in other situations. So thank you, everyone. We went over a little bit. Sorry about that, but I hope you learned something, and we'll keep the conversation going at this incredible critical time. So thank you. See you.